Poszukujemy naszej pani moderator.
I'm still looking for our moderator. Thank you for joining us. Please join us on stage. Please invite your guests and also Mr. General.
Dzień dobry Państwu. Mam nadzieję, że...
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you've come back stronger after a coffee break. A very intensive, hopefully very interesting session ahead of us on the AI, big tech, and the impact of those technologies on basically everything, also from the point of view of security. Brigadier General, PhD engineer Mariusz Chmielewski will be speaking in a moment. He's a scientist, IT expert, IT architect involved in the construction of different AI systems, AI research. He's also responsible for this field in the Polish cyber defense component, Polish Armed Forces. He's got a PhD in this field. So I think we're looking forward to what we're going to hear about technologies, AI, and their impact on our security, defense, and the development of different competences linked to the military. Mr. General, the floor is yours.
Dzień dobry Państwu i bardzo dziękuję za...
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your introductory comments. Yes, it is quite true what you have heard. Perhaps I actually should start saying that it is my great honor and pleasure to meet you today and to present some of the points that have been prepared on the role of the AI and technology. But before I do that, let me just say that for 5 years I am deputy head of the cyber defense component in the Polish Armed Forces, where we deal with different challenges linked to technology basically on an everyday basis. Let me just repeat perhaps the words of General Molenda, the head of our unit, that, well, we basically on an everyday basis, we are dealing with different threats. Some say war, we prefer to use the word conflict. Yes, this is exactly what is happening, and you have seen that the recent election in Poland was peaceful. We all say, yes, it was, but actually it was not such a peaceful event. But, well, we just say that this is the domain that we are dealing with, where very often we have what is called shadow warfare. Shadow warfare is the type of arms used in different shades of gray. This is what we refer to as also hybrid tools, and they certainly were used. So in the context of hybrid threats and the discussion that we are going to have here together with our colleagues in this panel, we will be speaking about those technologies. But some of the points I would like to make in my introductory speech, they concern very directly the way we perceive the different hybrid threats. So a number of elements I want to raise so that we know exactly what the current situation is, the changes to the strategies, operations, and the tactics that we apply. So first of all, the protection of the sovereignty of the state at the time of the hybrid war. In our understanding, it should concern seven different areas. I will describe them briefly. I would also like you perhaps to, but again, before I say that, to make it clear, I'm not going to be focusing on the military side only, but I will make it broader, not only military related. One thing that we are taught in our school for generals, strategic ones, first of all, the war is waged or is fought by the whole state, not just the military that is responsible for the war. The military, of course, is the armed arm of the state, if you can put it like this, but the whole country, the whole state, well-prepared economy, first of all, then education. There is no cyber forces without proper education. There are other aspects also where you can see that there are more and more technologies we come across today. They build our capabilities. but also at the same time they built what is, I think, also understood generally, what we call a multiplier of technologies, a military multiplier also of the force of the state. Now, referring to the current conflicts, what happened in Ukraine, just to remind you, in 2023, for the first time, drones were used to hit the infantry, humans in the infantry. Why did it happen? This was the only actual way. This is the only way for the Ukrainians actually had at their disposal. It was their idea, the Ukrainian idea, to replace again and to use this multiplier of technological force as an element that can generate kinetic force. So the first point, the first thesis I'm making, hybrid warfare is not so much a new type of weapon as a new permanent strategy of competition. Why? Well, the reason is that we speak here about threshold of conflict or war. War is a primarily legal concept. In the past, two countries, or let's say two men facing each other, they would declare war on one another. This is the way it was done. But actually, today is very much different. Honor does not play the role it did in the past. So today, the borders are not very clear. The modern battlefield no longer has clear boundaries. We've got a mix now of different actions. So it's of key importance to understand who is on the other side. Cyber attribution, as we say, very important at this moment. And why is it so important to use those tools that we call tools that are applied at the threshold of war? NATO is also prepared here, certainly. I just want to refer to a concept that is called multi-domain operations, MDO. Operations of this type are the operations that use the technologies at our disposal to increase the speed and efficiency of the battle, the hits that are made, and hybrid methods are being used. So information warfare, electromagnetic spectrum, and cyber spectrum being used, the three different areas where tools are being used. They can be used, and they also have an impact on societies at large. One can imagine now the consequences, possible consequences of cyber attacks that would block, for instance, the banking system and the access of citizens to banking services, to cash. You can imagine the possible panic resulting from that. So resilience we try to build is built as taking into account not only this defense aspect, but also the aspect that is important is to bring back the systems to their full functionality. What is important is for the systems, after a possible, perhaps, attack, once the system suffers as a result of the attack, but it has to be renewed, it has to be rebooted, it has to be made strong again. Thank you very much for this also introduction. Yes, it was important to hear it from the mouth of a civilian. We want to be active also, yes, in our defense. But if I can also add something to that, a certain agenda perhaps that is promoted over a longer period of time. Professor, you have said active defense. Yes, there is such a notion. The Americans were the propagator of this idea, replacing offensive cyber. Offensive very often is associated with aggression. For this reason, defense forward, this phrase has been invented. Then active defense. And then persistent engagement. These are the terms that are being used. What is actually this persistent engagement? It's, imagine a situation you with your opponent touching arm, hand touching hand, and pushing. What does it actually mean? In the cyber area, you learn about the mode of operandi of your enemy, and also you are in touch all the time. You are in contact. You can push, and in my view, it's very important. It's the clue of the hybrid actions that we do, and also the capabilities that we build. Now, the second point I want to make is that the goal of hybrid warfare is not military annexation, but strategic paralysis. Who is thinking about gaining land today? Not each conflict is about gaining new territories, new land. You can take over companies, capital, human capital also. And as a matter of fact, in most cases, it's about winning or taking over what we've seen for a long time, because it's been there in the NATO doctrines since 2010. 2010, hearts and minds, taking over hearts and minds of the population. Extremely important and evident element of an asymmetric conflict.
Teraz jeżeli chodzi
And now, let's talk about the objectives of a hybrid war. We should mention attacking the decision-making cycle. In IT, we try to perfectly model and design processes. If they are open, it's enough to know them. Once you do, you have a clear path showing you which elements need to be taken off so that they are not operational, so that they are not effective. And one more thing that should be addressed, the so-called erosion of trust. So, under hybrid operations, we see daily, there are certain things that they do quite often, and our adversary is quite ingenious about it. I will explain how they are ingenious in a moment. So, what they're doing, they are trying to erode our trust to basic state institutions. So, there is this information space, the so-called info domain or infosphere. What happens is a clash of 2 or 3 institutional political forces. When you encourage that and orchestrate that, the authority of those various parties is undermined. As a result, we, citizens, are not sure whether one or another party or side acts to the benefit of our state. So who is on the other side? We've got a perfectly designed system. It works within the main or social services. They have a special unit in St. Petersburg. So their headquarters is the size of this hotel. And every floor is a different continent and every room is a different country. You have specialized linguists there, as well as IT personnel, artificial intelligence experts. There are people who monitor the European, German, the Polish information space, and they use info domain tools and do it daily, and there are no restrictions there. Nobody is going to be charged for orchestrating what's been described by Madam Professor. The people who do that are actually awarded. So which side of the political dispute clash is supported? I don't know, and it doesn't really matter. What they are after is the right temperature of this political clash. They don't care who wins. What is important is for the temperature of this clash to be as high as possible. So disinformation is no longer pure propaganda. At this point is a very precise cognitive weapon. Let me explain. Some time ago, what we could do is to identify disinformation because it would be drafted. It would be written word. So yes, a number of documents were reviewed, but the thing is, when it comes to how big a pace is, well, basically the pace is so huge that nobody reviews it all. So the digital services providers tell us that they have certain review mechanisms. What they have is they can make certain bits of information more popular. They can make it even more popular. And which ones? Basically the ones that evoke our intensive human emotions. it is the controversial posts or bits of discussion are highly valued. Now, artificial intelligence, do we have any mechanism that can analyze it? Yes, we do, of course. But please remember, when you're trying to analyzing disinformation, when you're analyzing deep fakes, it is hard even for humans, because you need to be first very knowledgeable and you have to have reliable sources to identify these. What is special about disinformation is that disinformation looks like true information. It simply modifies certain elements to support the thesis that is promoted by the adversary. Disinformation strikes at the very foundations of social cohesion. Social media, we will cover that today, social media are not owned by us. They are not our technology assets. It is the technology giants that have those tools. I will tell you a bit about our craft. I'll ask you a question. Maybe we can discuss it later. What do you think is a procedure for removing a bit of information from Facebook or X? I'm not going to make you happy. It's not that we, services, reach out to those websites so that they can bring it out, or that we can actually do it. No, we cannot. And there are threats there, there are risks there. We make a request to a given website and it is also reviewed, it's verified. So we are also being reviewed. And now, number 4. Let's talk about our greatest assets. It's something that we are discussing here at this conference, that is the assets of the Western world and the Western culture. Freedom of speech, openness, our trust in state institutions, they are the main vectors of attack. It has turned out that they are our greatest vulnerabilities. They are being exploited by those organizations that are trying to disinform us. But on top of that, you can add more. You have various areas where we are in social conflict, right? So there are certain tools available in this digital world that can allow you to wage cognitive war on the cheap. So, those digital platforms, the question is how transparent they are, how accountable they are, can we trust them? Those platforms want us to trust them. They are trying to build this trust. And this trust is built by means of technology solutions, but also through certain legal tools. So, an important thing, there is certain procedure in all countries. If a war breaks out, state institutions such as the president and other institutions such as the parliament, the authorities, they have certain tools at their disposal, and they can suspend the operations of certain legal acts. And certain acts are actually suspended. Those acts regulate how we behave in peacetime, but we need to make sure that during wars, when there is a higher need, certain rights will be disabled. And Ukraine is a very good example of that. Ukraine never allowed certain registers to be taken out. In the first kinetic strikes that destroyed databases, they had to move to the cloud. But there's a difficulty because of legal limitations, and those limitations were taken off so that the country, so that the state could operate. And many of these registers were moved outside the territory of Ukraine so that the state could operate. Another thesis. In the digital age, we have the so-called, we have a situation where state sovereignty is equal to digital sovereignty. Can a state be truly sovereign if our assets are fully hosted by a foreign technology company? Let's answer that question. Is it really possible? Would we be truly sovereign? Would a company, whatever the name, if they took over our digital assets, would this company make sure that we are truly independent, and would they make sure that our data can be properly processed? We should never be ready for that. Such institutions as the cyberspace component, we have this task of making sure that we are digitally sovereign. Now, how does it impact us, Poles? Digital twin is something well described in professional literature. There are a number of technologies that surround us. We know that we cannot generate these technologies by ourselves. It's a fact. We cannot reproduce them. Imagine you are supposed to identify the technologies that will make us truly sovereign. And there is this smart nation thing, and this is something that is important. So it's something that we do. We are identifying these important technologies. Now, thesis number 6. Or rather, I've just covered number 6, but there is this important element hidden in thesis number 6. Are there any institutions in Poland, civilian and military, or special services? Are there any of those that make sure that we remain digitally sovereign? And do they make sure that the state can operate in the digital domain? We should be proud because all of these have such institutions. Who are they? They are institutes or special forces, or rather special services or military units that work in this domain. And in Poland we have a special composition of the mix. As a result, whenever there is a question and a decision needs to be made, we can say that there is a special military unit or certain services will be able to do that, that we will be able to provide certain technological capabilities. I can show you that it's possible, speaking in my role as a general. Number 7, effective defense cannot rely solely on the military. I've already said that. It requires an integrated approach by the entire state. But we also have certain expectations. I need to tell you what those expectations are, because it's something that I've agreed on with my superior. Imagine you've got a boxing bout. Can you win a boxing bout only by having a good guard? Madam Professor can also answer this question. You cannot win a boxing bout being only on the defense, just by keeping your guard. We need to cross this mental barrier, because we heard attacking, we heard being on the offensive, but we have this armed bit of our country, and the military needs to have a certain set of legal acts that will sanction certain operations, and we do have such legal framework. I will cover another thing that is being discussed at length now. Imagine a certain legal framework. This legal framework tells you, build your capabilities to defend yourself and also to be on offense. Don't use it. You need to have these offensive capabilities for when the time comes. And this is indeed true. The military trains itself. You've seen the Iron Gate and the show of the military potential. But I need to make you a little bit worried here, because cyberspace has no borders. 2, cyberspace and shadow. Cyberspace is a shadow warfare, right? So Basically, in the cyber domain, you can act without revealing your identity. You can camouflage yourself. So basically, we're talking about a certain type of activity, also in the sphere of diplomacy. Basically, we're talking about a certain set of tools that allows you to promote your own policy and trying to reach your objectives, and you operate on the very threshold of war while doing that. I will share what we've heard today. Namely, somebody has said that there are certain active operations or active capabilities that need to be there. Mind you, I'm talking about acting in an alliance. So basically it's about capabilities that allow us to act militarily without disclosing that it's us. And also, it's about operating in a certain way. So they need to be there so that we can project our force. We don't need to disclose that it has been us who did that. We need to have this capability. Courage has been mentioned. Responsibility has been mentioned. The military has certain decision-making centers that are trying to build these capabilities. So you might ask whether we have that. I can assure you that we do. We have such centers. So it needs to be reiterated that what takes the longest is us trying to interpret the legal framework, because there is a certain legal world that we operate in, and the legal framework as it is has been built, unfortunately, so that it can properly operate in the time of peace. You know, you are looking at me, a soldier, so you immediately think of the military and the war. What I'm trying to say is that we need to prepare a certain legal framework. We need to prepare certain capabilities, nationally and within NATO, so that we can use them without any hesitation. And we need a new strategy. So basically, it is not about deterrence by denial, but rather deterrence by punishment. We need to be able to deter so that our punishment is quick and unavoidable. And this is where I'm going to finish my speech.
Bardzo dziękuję pani.
Thank you very much, General. And another question. You might have some conclusions. If so, do let us know. But now we are starting a panel. It's very much concentrated on technologies. It's going to discuss the impact of AI and large big tech companies on how society is transforming, a very broad subject indeed. But we've got very interesting panelists. Friederike Ladenburger is going to join us. Ms. Ladenburger is the Secretary of the COMECE Commission of Ethics. Loránt Vincze is going to join us. He is an MEP, EPP Group Coordinator in the Constitutional Affairs Committee. So he's a Romanian politician, but his ethnicity is Hungarian, and he's a Hungarian minority activist. Jarosław Grzywiński, the President of NASK. And last but not least, Michał Fedorowicz, the President of the European Analytical Collective Res Futura, an expert, a practitioner when it comes to social media platforms and how they impact our societies. My name is Sylwia Czubkowska. I'm a journalist, a podcaster. I co-author Tech Stories. And I will try to turn this panel a bit into a podcast. There will be a number of stories and discussions. We want all of us to be comfortable. So that's why I'm going to use English when I talk to our foreign guests and Polish when I speak to Polish guests. You have interpretation, so I hope nothing is going to get lost in interpretation. And importantly, the last 10 or 15 minutes of this panel is going to be for you. There will be a Q&A. So listen carefully so that you can be a part of this discussion.
Będę umiała wyjąć mikrofon. A, potrafię, nie jest źle. So, once again, it's really nice to see you all. Bardzo miło mi Państwa przywitać na miejscu. Zaczniemy troszeczkę po polsku, ale tak jak powiedziałam, potem pytania.
Start a bit in Polish, but then I will pose some questions to our foreign guests in English. I start with a quote, in my view, a much telling quote about where we are now. Just like the Soviet leaders in Moscow, the IT companies have not rediscovered the truth about people. They just impose new, subversive order. The algorithms of AI simply see us as a mine of attention. A quote of a specialist who I think is very skillful about our contemporary world, but also I can say that when I was reading those words at the beginning, I was a bit surprised for the words of Harari. Maybe he's exaggerating, comparing IT companies to communist regime. But then, actually, and unfortunately, I can see more and more links and similarities. I'm not really happy about that, but it's not about actually being critical only, but, well, I'm trying to understand this world, changing world. So, referring to the quote and also referring to the title of our conference, Lonely Europe, my first question concerns how much lonely? Are we very lonely? Maybe starting with Friederike.
Is upon lonely Europe. So does this our attitude in Europe make us Europeans a lonely island in the ocean of the countries and the corporations, of the people who see salvation and some inevitable future in the technologies, and only Europeans are only focused on regulations and seeking some problems and focusing on ethical issues? Do you see us as this lonely island?
Yeah, thank you very much for the tough first question.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm happy that I choose my green jacket this morning. You know, green is the color of hope. And so we heard it several times yesterday. And I also think in the whole setting of digital ethics, Europe is not lonely. The situation is difficult, the situation is complex, but I think there are signs of hope that we start to prepare ourselves in finding solutions. So maybe allow me, because I work for the Commission of the Bishop Conferences in the European Union, to give a very brief oversight about this development of digital ethics. You can see in Europe, in the European Union, I think more or less since 10 years, an enormous development and an awareness that digital ethics is an important political question. But how to deal with that? And I think for that, you see three different levels. So the first, of course, is the ethical discourse. So about what is that ethical digital discussion? If you look to the Catholic Church, since 10 years, I think, all the pontifical academies really developed expertise, were bridge builders, brought together experts. And I'm very happy that we now have a Pope who explicitly referred, when he explained his name, to AI. And he compared the situation to Pope Leo XIII at the end of the 19th century. Yeah, so you see a development there. And on the political side, 8 years ago, Mrs. von der Leyen, with her first mandate in her speech she pointed out this is one of our key elements. We have to find European solutions. We have to embed the ethical discussion into political action. And yeah, we probably will go more into details. A lot of work was done. The Artificial Intelligence Act, the Media Freedom Act, now preparing the Union European Democracy Shield. In all these things, you have an enormous ethical perspective, and the very specific European approach is to find a different setting than in other parts of this world. A different regulation than in China, where it is dominated by the state. A different setting as it is found in the United States. It's developing there, where the market has a very strong input, and now with the latest decisions of Donald Trump, it is even, less and less regulated. So I don't think that Europe is lonely, but we really have to do our homework.
Thank you. So, Loránt, you as a member of European Parliament, probably you hear quite often that you are the reason of of the many people who are the reason of over-regulating European technological branches, and this is the reason why we are so lonely in this technological development all over the world. Do you see it as really being lonely, or maybe we are rather part of this Brussels effect? I mean, this expert of the regulations all over the world, like an expert of, well, good ways of regulating. So, what's your position?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the question. Well, I would say we are not lonely because AI and the big tech are with us. And this is the topic of the discussion. Well, indeed, concerning regulation, Brussels is over-regulating, or it was over-regulating, and we are trying now to do less. And even to try to go back and cut from the red tape that was adopted in the previous decades. But regarding the regulation on the AI and big tech, here we made important steps. I will maybe come back to that. But I would start with saying that today we have the discussion on AI as the last point of the agenda. And I would say that for the next years, it will come higher on the agenda, certainly, because AI and all this big tech world is not the future, is the present, with already some experiences from the past decade. Let me share with you two stories. One is personal. Last Saturday, I was invited by the Reformed Bishop of Transylvania to a school year opening of the Protestant Hungarian Protestant high schools in Transylvania. So I had to give a speech, and as many colleagues do, more and more politicians ask from AI to provide some speaking points. I did the same. And I gave the prompt, what I am expecting, how long should be, what are the circumstances, and I asked also for a quote from a Protestant thinker from Transylvania. I got the reply, including a quote, a name and a quote. And I said to the AI, okay, now provide me the link to this quote. He provided me with a link. The link was not working. Then I asked him about the person, the thinker. He's a Protestant bishop. He lived in this time. I asked him, okay, provide me the details. There were no details. This bishop did not exist. So this is the hallucination of the language model. Then he said sorry, and he provided me with another name. The language models provide also hallucination because they want to please you. This is how they are programmed. But we are still in the early phase of the language models. The second story is in Albania. 2 months ago, in Albania, the position of AI state minister was created. It's Djela, her name. It is a totally AI tool that is part of the government. It works on digitalization, simplifying public procurement, apparently making sure that there is no corruption involved in the public procurement process, and so on. So, what is happening? It's practically part of our everyday life. And we can look at it with opportunities and look at it as there are threats as well in our life. The opportunities are there because they can really strengthen participation. These AI tools are able to help citizens to access information that is policy. They can engage with more insights on different issues. It can contribute to better governance. Hopefully this will happen in Albania, but you can take other examples. In Estonia, which is almost entirely a digital country, it has really important benefits for the citizens when accessing public services, healthcare, social insurances, and so on. It is also protecting rights because AI is able to filter, to say it is something valid or not, hopefully when the language models are even more advanced. From a Christian point of view, it supports subsidiarity. Because technology can empower citizens, can empower communities and support decision-making processes. But then there are other threats.
But do you really feel that this Albanian AI minister is like a solution for Albanian problems, or it's rather, this razzle-dazzle because they've got so many issues with corruption? So don't talk about corruption. Don't speak about this. We have AI minister. Let's focus on something, very technological and very forward, because I see it rather like a PR project than a real solution.
It's always twofold. So it's a communication exercise. It's a huge win for the government when people believe it, but maybe in practice this can really work. In a country, in the Western Balkans, where corruption is really high, if the processes are automated and it can these machines can filter information, then it can provide benefits. And this is where we will go slowly. And then the threats, many of you remember the Romanian presidential election that were cancelled. The first round was cancelled due to intervention of hybrid war in Romania, mainly on TikTok, but also other platform bots were constantly attacking the citizens. And we found ourselves weak and unprepared to confront them. So there was a decision of the Constitutional Court to cancel the elections. To date, I am not really sure that it would hold, as now member of the Committee on Constitutional Affairs, but I think this was the right decision for democracy. But did we learn the lessons from that? Now, do we have sufficient explanations? Do we have data that support that decision? This didn't really happen, but the continuation is there. Tomorrow we will have the very important elections in Moldova. One party was banned from running into the elections just 3 days ago, based on influence of a state actor, namely Russia, of course. And the question is there, whether this is a truly reasoned decision, or it is now the democracy has to be a bit forced to be able to defend us.
I will ask you some more questions about, this Kalin Georgescu, TikTok Messiah, but let's little bit.
He's on trial now.
Yes, he's on a
The
trial. But
indictment is there.
but we're gonna come back to this issue because it's so interesting. But Jarosław, przejdę teraz do ciebie i przejdę na język polski.
I will switch into Polish as we've got the next speaker who will be answering in Polish. The same question, are we really lonely in Poland? Are we lonely in Europe? As for our approach to technologies, on the one hand, we are enthusiasts. In Poland, we are very fond of new technologies. We accept different new technologies. We're very open to that. But on the other hand, we are part of the European approach here, with our focus on human rights, the rule of law, ethics. We need to think, perhaps, about which way we are going. Do you really feel that we are this lonely island on the ocean of rapidly developing economies, open to everything, using all possible solutions, all possible tools, and maybe we are perhaps this lonely island, so we choose not to participate? Perhaps. What is your approach? Thank you very much for this question. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this conference and part of this panel discussion. You have mentioned a number of different elements, raised a number of issues in your question. I will do my best to answer as many as possible. Well, first of all, I represent NASK SA, joint stock company. We sometimes call ourselves a civilian special services unit, in charge in some way of the net, supervising different elements, supervising the government, for instance, computing cloud. I'm not going to go into too much detail perhaps here about NASK and people employed in this company. It is my feeling, unfortunately, over the recent 2 years at least, that, well, I'm not sure whether Europe is lonely. I think we need actually more integration in technologies. My experiences from my visits to Brussels in AI Act. Well, AI Act is a big directive, just to explain, on the implementation of AI in Europe. It refers to what you have said, yes, so that we can do everything so that we can do nothing. AI directive, I think, moved, in not really the direction of developing new things, but on prohibiting or banning things. Maybe too much prohibiting, not enough developing in this act. In Europe, maybe there is this tendency to restrict too much rather than develop. Speaking about Europe as a lonely continent, still perhaps I would like to refer to Mario Draghi's report, very well known, mentioned very often. So the report has been published, but what followed? Basically nothing. So plenty of panel discussions and that's it. Maybe some intellectual ferment, but not much concrete action after the report of Draghi. I think we still do not have the European Silicon Valley or something comparable. Well, so it looks like there are actions taken, but not in an integrated way. I think better integrated approach, like a big European fist in new technologies. Can you imagine at all the European Silicon Valley? Where would you locate it? Because, well, it seems that almost everywhere, almost anywhere, there are 150 problems blocking the creation of a European Silicon Valley. There is some discussion about AI factories now, but well, this is also linked to what you said. What is the best place where to locate an area for the development of high technologies? Well, my feeling generally, based on my experiences, my work every day, my conclusion is such that we are not integrated, we are disintegrated. For some time, I'm glad that we speak more and more about what is called digital sovereignty, data sovereignty. We've come to understand it at last. But there is a difference. For instance, the Prime Minister mentioned so-called repolonization of some areas. But when I speak to big companies, for instance, state-owned companies, if I tell them that it's better to have their own cloud solutions, but actually they have contracts with hyperscalers, as they are called, or other big techs. But still, it seems most actually say maybe it's because of ignorance. Some say that common solutions, international solutions are safer, not their own solutions. So on the one hand, it's good that we think more about technological sovereignty, data sovereignty in Europe. We started this approach, and hopefully it's going to be followed by other steps in the implementation area. Excellent. Thank you very much.
We will talk about sovereignty later yet. Michał, you have an interesting point of view. Firstly, you've been studying various narratives you can find on social media platforms. Let's talk about those narratives on how Europe is positioned in the digital world. Also, you are close to politics. You see how these narratives reach or do not reach politicians. Do politicians think anything? Do they have a view about how Europe is positioned technologically, how Poland is positioned? Thank you for this question. Thank you for the invitation. You should be upfront in life. The truth is, we, Europe, are lonely, and disparate countries are even more lonely in all that. And we are lonely in this world of technology, not just about, I do not mean only AI. Look, computers here are Americans. The beamer, the projector is Korean. So no, we do not have our technologies. Let's be objective. We don't have European technologies. We used to have Nokia, and it disappeared. If you look around, you will see that we are indeed lonely or alone. We've been talking about ethics. Are we ethical or not? Look online. Out of 10 posts on politics and society, 7 can be labeled as extremist or populist. 7 out of those 10 are basically promoting something that we've been fighting as a civilized world for the last 2,000 years. So yes, in terms of technology, we are alone, we are lonely. Look about how soft power, Chinese soft power, is convinced. So basically, China has been promoting themselves as a superpower. And people, well, less informed, are spreading that. People come to believe that they've all have these magical technological miracles. And people lap it in. If you studied that, you would see that most young people believe that Asia is the future. China, not the US or Europe. So China has managed to impose this narrative. There is data that supports it. When it comes to soft power, China are ahead of the UK at this point. It was a major leap. The only entity more powerful in terms of soft power than China is the US. And China has been making progress in this regard for years now. So let's look at social media. Look at all these comments, the videos. I just want you to understand where we are. The year is 2018. So Instagram is this app. 38,000 photos would be unloaded every minute. It was 2018. In 2022, close to 700,000 photos would be uploaded per minute. There is still 24 hours in a day. Our brains are as big as they are. And we have heard that content polarizes people. Now, social media has certain algorithms that do not belong to us Europeans. You could say that somebody is our friend or an ally, but look at how certain platforms behave. If you see how they behave, you will conclude that they don't like the European Union. Some of the platform owners say that the EU is the worst thing under the sun and should be destroyed. Twitter/X is one of them. And Twitter has the biggest impact on our social perception. And the owners of such a platform says those things. You cannot claim that they are our friends. We are trying to comfort ourselves, but that's not reality. Now, let's look at the last 3 years. There's been war in Ukraine, and you see that the platforms are hesitant. So there were these anti-vaccine accounts. They switched to anti-Ukrainian accounts or anti-Ukrainian positions. Many of them had these Slavic symbols, or semi-Slavic or quasi-Slavic symbols. The general mentioned Facebook, but remember, there's just one moderator that Facebook has responsible for this part of Europe. And, just think about it. How many million users there are in this part of the world? And there is just one person responsible for tens of millions of people, and they might or might not speak Polish. And you can report such an account, but first you need to explain what those accounts do, why they are a threat. And what are social media? So, today, a democratic process is taking place in an infrastructure belonging to the US.
Sobie piszecie na amerykańskiej infrastrukturze.
All of you use US infrastructure. We have no access to it. We don't know how it works. Whatever you write there, you're not the owners. And if you use TikTok, it belongs to China. Also, this infrastructure has changed our social perception. It's not that suddenly there are 2 million people that appear out of thin air who believe that Jews should be removed. No, they just have organized themselves using social media. Also, people don't know how social media work, but then they learn, they get likes, and they realize that they get more likes if they get more aggressive. So this is how algorithms operate. They look for extremes. Well, we are not so much technologically alone. We are naked. We are stripped naked. This is the most comfortable continent to live on. And yet, when it comes to technology and social media, it is our soft underbelly, A bit of plastic can fly in and we all panic. One more thing. 7 out of 10 comments in social media in Poland are populist. And these populists say that Europe as it is today makes no sense, power needs to be taken over and everything needs to be disorganized. 7 out of 10 comments say that. Did we act as losers? Did we simply took the wrong path? The gentleman I'm quoting is an academic. He was quoting his own experience. Were we simply too noble and too lofty? Were we too ideologically correct? Or maybe we didn't stand a chance to begin with. Let's leave ethics aside. But at the end of the day, money matters. Amazon, Meta, Alphabet, they do not pay taxes in the US. They get huge subsidies. If today you want to find a startup, you pay taxes. And we know that if you pay no taxes, you grow faster. Let's start with taxes. So if you want to grow analytics or AI, they will find investors. And after a month, the state will knock on their door, pay taxes. How ethical should AI be? We need to talk about it. AI, or let me rephrase that. AI, if it is ethical, it's going to tell us which cosmetics we do not need to use when we've scanned our skins, but the medical industry will always oppose that. Capital matters, resources matter. The European capital is focusing on the wrong things because we are not providing any tax breaks for them. We need a similar system, similar to the one in the US. We need to change the tax system. People are there, technologies are there.
My nie potrzebujemy w analityce deregulacji.
We don't need to deregulate analytics. We need more servers and development. All of that is costly. Data is also costly. We need it. But we clash with the state. The authorities tell us, oh, fine, it's all very well, but the rules are the rules. And in the US, they have Amazon, a huge corporation. And it takes tourists to space. Elon Musk launches rockets, and they have never paid a single dollar in taxes. Technology matters the most. We need to say that. If you work with that, just grow. Friederike.
From Michał, that ethical, what ethical? Only money and technology counts. Do you also see that this ethical point of view, this Christian also ethical point of view right now, it's like, it's for nobody. I mean, we can talk about this, we can write about this, but, you know, it's too late.
Just jedno słowo. Trochę dzisiejsza rozmowa.
So, there is this comparison that I can use now. I've always wanted to do that. At this point, basically, it's about the first synod. It's a bit like where Christianity should go. Some people said we should stick to the old ways. So basically, this council was about where do we go? Where should Christianity should go? Do we leave the old rules? But if we stick to the old rules, we'll not be universal. If we choose universal, if we choose different rules, we will be more popular. So this is where we are.
On ethical and technological issues?
Yeah, so I would like to come back to my first. I'm really convinced that we are not lonely. And I think you see at this panel exactly the different positions. So, too much regulation, too restricted. And then money rules, ethics cannot really help. And I really think we are with the back to our wall. I like more the expression that we are naked than lonely. And I really think if you look into the details, from a Christian perspective, you see really strong acting. 2020, February in Rome, the Vatican signed this Rome call on AI ethics. I was there in the room, and to be very honest, I was very critical at that time. We worked already on contributions to the AI Act, and I thought, oh wow, well, they are not close enough to the real urging questions. But I totally changed my mind. Where can you see in the last decades something like that? The Vatican, together with private actors, Microsoft, IBM, I know it was heavily criticized, also Italian government, FAO, the president of the European Parliament was there. He did not have the institutional power to sign. And this call is publishing 6 very fundamental principles how AI systems should be, and in addition, 3 impact areas, ethics, education, and rights. But then the story went on. And then, after the pandemic, 2023, the Jewish and the Muslim authorities signed, without changes, they signed the call. So the three Abrahamic religions. And 2024 in Hiroshima, this very impressive meeting, 23 more religious leaders. And I know if we now discuss about these 6 very fundamental principles, and it is very weak in some sense, but the original understanding was to form a cultural movement, and a cultural movement where these religious authorities agreed on a minimum standard. And this, for me, is a ground where we can stand on and where we can work with. And it is my daily job in Brussels to go with these 6 principles, I don't know, to people in the parliament committees, and I see sometimes these, oh wow, you know, now they are coming with this roll call for AI. But if we go into details, if we really see how AI systems should be designed, implemented, then I really see, I see signs of hope.
Yeah. When we started, I mean, when I say we, I mean European Union work on AI Act, it was 2017, 2018. So there was another vision of what is AI than right now we have, and that's why the main issue was security. I'm in the meaning of gaining security for citizens of European Union, in the terms of using AI. So it was very strongly based on ethics, even though when we see the works of these AI groups, I mean the groups that were working on AI Act, there were lots of discussions on ethics, if it's really ethic or is it ethic washing, things like that. But 7 years later, 8 years later, we see AI as a practical part of our lives, of our businesses, of our security, of our education, and so on. So once again, Friederike, I have to ask you, do you see that ethic and ethic issues are still as important for policymakers and for technological, and not only technological, just branches, industries in Europe? Because just world has changed in this couple of years. Do they use it ethic as an ethic washing just for discussions, or is it really some, you know, important part of preparing products or preparing the new law?
I think if you just see what is going on right now in Brussels, there you can see that ethics still matters, that of course responsible political acting is not possible without ethics. I would never do this, bashing of politicians. So the AI Act was released last year, and now we have already the changing draft proposals on the table. The European Commission said, well, we are aware it is too complex. We are in a different geopolitical situation. We have to simplify. It is too bureaucratic. So we are just waiting now for the 4th so-called omnibus proposal, so to change existing EU law in the digital sphere. And if you talk to the people in the European Commission, in the Parliament, of course there are discussions about the red lines, what cannot be changed. And I am sometimes, of course, not happy about the enormous speed of changes, but we have to be realistic.
But it's too fast or it's too slow? Too fast or too slow?
Well, I think it is sometimes too fast to bring all the needed stakeholders together.
This is surprising, because European Union doesn't seem like a very fast
it is not fast enough to react to the realities of the world.
Okay. Jarek, powiedziałeś o NASK-u, że
You've said about Musk that he is a special institution, a civilian special force. So you represent NASK, which is a research institution. Now you act under the auspices of the Ministry of Digital Affairs. So you are responsible for cybersecurity, for business, for research and politics. You are partly responsible for things to do with education. One could be mistaken for believing that this should be this interface, this point where you could find it easy to combine things that seem to be clashing, because we want to be ethical but want to be pragmatic. So do you believe that people want to listen to you, to NASK? And if somebody does, who is it?
Służby innych państw.
Not an easy question. Well, certainly special services of other states listen to us. But I think NASK is a kind of an integrator, integrating different groups. Are there any other similar institutions in Europe? Yes, but maybe the name in Poland is not really adequate to what we are doing in NASK. It's an old name, yes, from the very beginning of the internet in Poland, domains, and there are still some people asking us about the business that actually it's 1% maybe of our activities, but this is where it all started. And, well, now we are dealing with cybersecurity mainly, telecommunications, data centers. This is where I think that Europe is lagging behind as well. We should catch up a bit, you said. I'm not sure when, maybe it's a euphemism, a bit. Hyperscalers, 2/3 of the European market. Data processing are the biggest companies. Well, political, it's more political perhaps, the Ministry of Digitization. I'm not a politician. Address this question better perhaps to the ministry. But do you see now, is my question. Also a question about our future. Do you think that there is anyone in politics being aware and trying to come up with, how shall I call it, the future of the digital world based on European values? These are not just some ideas from some old books of an old synod. I'm sorry for using this word here, but some people think this way, but protecting us, but also catching up and joining those developing quickly their technologies. Yes, I can see that this digital policy, we can say that there are some shortcomings, of course, but I think we are moving roughly in the right direction. And I think that the coordination of technological activities between the different ministries in Poland, for instance, it works quite well, I must say. In other areas, it could be quite a good example of those modern solutions. Obyvatel, computing cloud, government cloud, that should be used even more. It is there. So answering your question, whether anyone listens to our voice, well, it seems that in spite of all, people do listen. We integrate many interesting solutions. And in many areas, let me also refer to what has been said here before with regard to especially Michał. I agree with Michał what he said about Facebook, about moderators, because we also work together with the Central Office for Fighting Cybercrime. We work with them here in Poland very often. And I'm glad that we say it clearly. It's in practical terms, actually, the policemen working there are frustrated because there are so many crimes online. And there are bots very often that are also used there. And I'm surprised that we as Poland, but not only Europeans, why is it so difficult in law enforcement? We should build a very clear barrier here. There are a number of areas, taxes in different platforms. But here it's very much about law. Also, if law is broken at different platforms, well, how shall I put it, colloquially, just put your act together and keep our legislation and treat us seriously as a partner. We are a state, a country in Europe, so our voice should be heard by those platforms. So I think a coordination of our positions, also additionally the military component, the civilian components, I think it's working quite well in Poland. Over the last 2 or 3 years, I think we've made a big step forward. Many actions have been made in a consistent way. And as we heard earlier, as General Chmielewski said, sometimes it seems to us that the last election was quiet, no problems. It's only because we are lucky to be ignorant about something that was really happening behind the scenes.
Yes. I'm coming back to you with the question about elections, which of course Jarek mentioned, elections in Poland, but the elections in Romania should be a huge lesson for at least whole Europe, even maybe for a whole world. Do you think that we get this lesson after the couple of months that passed since November? Do Europe get the lessons from Romania? I mean, lessons on how to deal with social platforms, how to deal with hybrid war, how to deal with understanding how algorithms works, how to deal with democratic institutions inside such problems, because all the decisions that were made in Romania were very hard decisions. Do you think that we get any lessons from those elections? And we get, is Romania stronger, and is European Union or Europe stronger after those elections?
Probably they work, and I hope they work in the background. But what we would like to see as citizens, that the rules change and that the law is enforceable, and we can prevent such actions in the future. I don't see that yet. I think we are in a huge disadvantage in Europe for several reasons. One is that we did not invest in this field, while China, for example, the big player, they did. They use a huge amount of public money, private money, with their closed systems. I think their technology is much more advanced than we believe. We have the US, where there is private investment, and then there is a lot of government grants, contracts that finance those companies. It is silly to believe that Elon Musk is financing SpaceX from his own pocket. No, it's NASA putting in the money. And
it's since the very beginning of
Europe,
Silicon Valley. It's those investments.
In Europe, we are expecting everything from public funds. Public investment, public procurement, public contracts, public everything. And this is a huge disadvantage for Europe. But now the money is there, so 200 billion euros for Invest AI program. Then there is this plan of 20 billion for gigafactories. Annually, the EU aims to spend 20 billion per year, private funds and public funds for annual R&D in AI and big tech. This can come, but I don't know if we are able to take this faster pace. And regarding our security threats, I agree with the general that we are still behaving like peace times will come back. And this will not happen. Even when the war in Ukraine is over, other threats will emerge. So we will need to get ready for hybrid threats, cyber threats in Europe, and we will have to change our rules. Yes, the AI Act, when it was adopted last year, 24 was already outdated. We need to revamp that, and our regulations. It has to be horizontal. AI is not one public sector; it's everything. It will be there in every aspect of our life, and the regulation has to be there as well. And I hope that we will be able to move faster in the EU. The legislative procedure, my colleague Jan knows better because he was the chief whip of our party, is 2 to 3 years. Nobody is waiting for us to give the proper answer in 3 years when the decision had to be made yesterday. And here the adaptability of the EU, the resilience to these things have to be there. But I agree with Friederike that we have responsibility and we have ethical responsibility. As long as they are elected members of the parliament, they have a mandate from their public and they want to propose ethical solutions. I hope also the Commission and the Member States do that. And one other important element. If in Europe we will try to build up 27 different systems to contract cyber attacks and all kinds of threats, we are like fighting with pistols against war machines, or trying to shoot down with a rifle 1,000 drones. It's not possible. We need better coordination. We need a unitary European response. So speaking about European defense and in some time, hopefully not too late in time, about European army is something valid, and this is needed.
But you little bit run away from my question. I was asking you about the position of the state towards big tech companies, especially after the elections in Romania. Do you see that we gain any lessons? I mean, do we know right now a little bit more about how to deal with such situations, especially during the elections, which is all the time in Europe? There's always some elections. And there are always very important elections. After the Romania elections, let me remind you, this was those elections that has to be, well, it doesn't has to be, but there was this decision of the court in Romania that were cancelled after the first round, in which suddenly the politician that was really almost unknown, Colin Georgescu, became the winner of the first round. And his position was mainly built on TikTok, but also on the other social media platforms. There were some issues with the money for the AdWords, the huge problems with this. But once again, does Romania and does European Union right now has a better understanding how to deal with such issues? Because they are going to come sooner or later.
Well, I think there are. So even the fact that it was stopped at the right moment shows that state agencies, state actors were able to defend us. Of course, for the future, we cannot know how this can be prevented. We still don't have legislative changes. We don't have an agency that is overseeing all this action. For example, we have the Audiovisual Council that deals with the traditional media. The legislation is not there to cover also online media and how to intervene. It would not be even possible for a civil committee to do this job. It is needed to have the security services, to have the army. We need a cooperation. But I am optimistic that we take these steps based on the reality and on the experience we had. In Romania, what happened basically was an attempt of coup d'etat with all the elements, and now we know, as Călin Georgescu and the people around him are indicted. One of his helpers was arrested in Dubai. So slowly, also the justice will do its role in that. Preventively, yes, we need to work on that, and all elections in Europe, even if it was really visible in Romania, I heard hinted in the speech of the general that in Poland there were such attempts as well. It was not that presented in the public discourse, but in all European elections this is present. And now Moldova, yeah, it's vital for the future of the country who will win these elections. If the pro-European forces had the chance to be in the public debate, or this hybrid interventions, TikTok, social media is hijacking the public opinion, and they will then get the majority. Is really risky.
So before we, zanim oddamy głos,
before we give the floor to our audience, dear panelists, can you try perhaps very briefly ask the title question of our panel discussion, AI and big tech? Do you think it's an opportunity or threat for our democracy in general? I know it's a very general question, but very briefly, Michał, can you start?
Do tego, co mówił Jarek. Muszą Państwo zdać...
To what Jarek said. One of the apps that has the best rating is the mObywatel, Polish app. Those who complain, they simply would like to have more state in the internet. So it's our export product, I think, that builds our social resilience. So the app mObywatel is an excellent product prepared by the state. And now, sorry, also public products, yes. So big trust to those products, not so much trust for politicians perhaps, but well, my experience is about 10 years. Together with colleagues, we are doing analytics of social trends, what's happening in politics and the social changes occurring. In the social media, thanks to the AI, we can perhaps see more and understand more thanks to those media, and perhaps to understand more what happens among those people, well, users of the internet, 20 million perhaps in Poland, over 60% of them using different social media, sending signals, interaction, share, and so on. So we can analyze trends thanks to AI, what happens online. So first of all, it's not a really critical point, but we are very close to the implosion of trust to social institutions. Polarization has damaged trust in public institutions. Recent kinetic incidents with drones in our airspace show that we don't really need to be attacked conventionally, but you can create panic with a few drones, and we will blame one another for lack of proper institutions. So the system can collapse from within. We have to do more also for the psychological resilience. If we look at the democracy, politicians need to realize that they are using tools that they have no control of. The more tools they use, the less control they have. And the paradox is that today, when we speak about the construction of some integrated security systems and so on, we need to be aware, first of all, of the social media, first of all, focused on the promotion of extreme, either rightist extreme or left extreme positions in the generation that, well, if we have people born after the year 2000, they simply live in the social media as if, from their perspective, such old companies as EPP, this is a political party, European Party, that have nothing to offer for them. They shape their positions, and their positions are shaped in the social media. When we speak about politics in the social media, well, the fake news, it's discussed, but what is good and what is bad, it's hardly ever discussed in the social media. And again, the role for us, most of institutions, well, in general, there are some priests also who use TikTok, good, but we don't have any documents, doctrines about perhaps what is right and what is wrong in the social media. We've had social media for 15 years or so. Nobody says in those media what is right and what is wrong. Because, okay, it's nice to have one priest or two priests with 1 million followers perhaps on TikTok, but at the end, we have a new generation of users and also voters who will decide about our future. People for whom, well, the moral compass of those people is built by the social media. And the social media are just like this empty glass. You can fill this empty glass with whatever you want to. And this has an impact on the position of those people. There are some regulators where you can try to add something to your tea, maybe some sugar or something. But nevertheless, still, what really matters is those that fill this glass. And sometimes our enemies fill this empty glass, some of our neighbors. But also there is a cynical use by some politicians of those mechanisms, the primeval mechanism, you might say. How shall I describe it? I will say something that this might seem very, very weird for you, but basically someone who 15 years ago is at the age of 25 maybe, or 20 years old, but when they started 15 years ago with the social media, it is possible that they never came across, well, the media, it's different, but there is no clear system that says that something is wrong, something is bad. the social media, of course, create alienation, but some behaviors, you might say that some behaviors are pathological, but those young people, how will they know that something is about unusual, is wrong, is pathological? No, they don't know. Many of them don't know. This might seem unusual for you, but this is the case. Today, when we speak to people, local government, why do we have this M-Obywatel app, for instance, that people trust in? Because, well, in comments, very often they say that this is something that they can have trust in. They know it's good. There were no attacks. And it seems that the state is behind that, not politicians, but the state. Because, well, again, the current situation is such that social media users trust no politicians, but still have some trust in the state. The uniform, yes, the uniform of different services still matters. And very often the state is considered maybe the last bastion. What our enemies have succeeded in was to divide us, and they are still trying to divide us. It's not about whom they support. Division is what matters. From different open media, we know that there are accounts that support actually both sides. Doesn't matter who will win, but simply it's about conflict, about continuing the conflict. So now, finishing, it seems that this is maybe the last window that is open about the future development, what is going to happen next. Because when we speak about the external situation now, shows that without a discussion between the media, politicians, also the military, without a strategy, communication strategy, it will be worse and worse. Yes, we've got freedom of speech, but we've got a hybrid war at the same time. Can you imagine a situation, the Second World War, Churchill saying that we defend against the Germans, and there will be some newspapers published by Germans in London in 1940-41 saying that actually we don't know where the bombs are coming from. These are not Germans. So we cannot blame the Germans because nobody knows where the bombs are coming from. Can you imagine Churchill at that time? If we have a hybrid war, yes, I think some administrative measures are also possible. We don't have maybe a very efficient judiciary in Poland at the moment. But if the social media, the platforms do not listen to us, I think an organization such as NASK might decide that you actually have to cut off or switch off part of the internet. There are no scientific no scientific evidence that if someone has no access to the social media will die of hunger after 7 days. No, I think they will simply get better after 7 days with no social media. So from this perspective, well, we still do not have the right tools. We don't have the logistics, but we are the suppliers of the network as if. So two things are needed. First of all, courage of the politicians and the courage of, I think, journalists that, well, they have to explain perhaps things. If politicians will decide, but then the journalists will say that this is a violation of the free speech principle. But, well, remember where we are. This is exactly what we are seeing today. We are the authors of this picture. Remember the graphics that after the Russian attack of the drones, almost 40% of comments in the Polish internet was blaming Ukraine, not Russia, but Ukraine. 200,000 almost different comments, shares, and so on, blaming Ukraine for the drones, not Russians. So imagine, starting at midnight, even before midnight on the 9th of September, we have this data until 8 in the morning, bombing the Polish information space, blaming Ukrainians, not Russians, for those acts. There is no country, perhaps with the exception of the US, that can do that. There is another one, China. China can switch off the internet, perhaps. Yeah.
Now, why was it happening at night? Because in the morning, most of us got up, woke up, looked at the world, and the world was saying, we don't know who sent those drones. And there was another narrative. The other narrative was the Polish military is wasting money because they were using expensive equipment. We, as an NGO, can say we follow, we monitor what is on the other side. Also, we've been hearing that Poland is spending money pointlessly on defense and Poland should be buying preschools and hospitals. You get those narratives. The Prime Minister says that there is a drone flying over Belvedere, And then later, somebody says in the Russian online world that it was a toy, and then we see it repeated in Poland, in Polish, that it was a toy. How do they know it was a toy? 3/4 of us learn about the world from social media. So, there are certain critical points today. We need to answer the question, what is good, what is bad, and where to take a step back. Imagine that there is the plague, an outbreak of the plague, and we say that, you can do whatever you want to. You cannot be democratic about everything, because in a moment we are going to lose what we've got. So there is a threat. Michał has said a number of important things, but Jarek, please, I would like to highlight one thing. So he said about us trusting the state and state institutions. It's a new thing, is it not? Let's look at the last few decades. We have been hearing that the world is changing fast. It's a technocratic world, and state is in the past. It's no longer important and relevant. This is the narrative we've been hearing. And we've been hearing that technologies will save us. And now people are turning back to the state. It is something that we are seeing in the West, in the Western world. Can we use this tendency so that technologies become a partner rather than just a threat? I agreed with a lot what has been said, but I believe that technologies also carry opportunities that we should put to the best possible use wherever we can. I don't want you to have this impression that data and digital sovereignty is always okay. You have the capital market transaction systems. I cannot imagine a situation where you have national solutions. It needs to be multinational, international by their very nature. So the Ministry of Digital Affairs developed the Polish AI system, a Polish LLM. So I have got a few ideas today. First, follow the money, whatever you look at. But you need to spend money well, reasonably, rationally. We've seen a number of various programs, and it's not enough to put together a few billion to make something successful. It's not only about the amount of money that you have. You need to be reasonable, and you can burn through any pile of cash, to be honest, without anything tangible to show for it. So you need to follow the money, and also the state needs to respect itself. There was this big tech boss that visited Poland, and it became quite a famous event, and it showed that we need to respect ourselves. We must not be like certain tribes that would accept glass beads in exchange for valuable things. We shouldn't do that. So we need to play a hard game, play tough, and they will be respecting us.
Small words about this BIGTECH CEO meeting. It was Sundar Pichai from Google who was meeting with our Prime Minister a couple of months ago. And during this meeting, the biggest proposition for the Polish side was $5 million for $5 million, yes, for AI skills for Polish citizens. $5 million, yes. It's not like mistake. So this is why we are laughing for this proposition. But coming back to the question. So Loránt, do you see rather opportunities or rather threats with this big tech industry and democratic issues?
I see it both, and we will stay with both. And it depends a lot on us if the opportunities will win and we will be able to control the threats. I think a lot depends on education, education of young children, of youth. It's not a solution to say mobile phone is banned in the school, and then they leave the school and the whole day they are on the social media, on their phone. So how can the school reinvent itself so that it manages to influence the youth and teach them how to interpret what they see in the social world. It needs more civic responsibility, and here everybody from the church to other organizations, politicians, we need their fair share. Very interesting idea about banning the internet during elections. We had in old times, you know, this campaign silence time for one day at least, when no more ads in the print media, on television, no more campaign meetings, so people can discern. What about closing for 1 month the social media in a country before the elections? Is it possible? Technologically, is it even possible?
1 month.
What democracy would have to say about that? How public services would function if the internet is not working? So we have really huge questions for what we need. New regulations. I don't believe that everything has to be regulated, but here we will need some new rules of the game, because this is not improving, and we will need to be ready to be able to overcome these threats for the sake of our societies.
And Friederike, your point of view on threats and opportunities.
Yeah, I would like to mention there is a document from the Vatican. It was released in January, Antiqua et Nova. It's dealing with artificial intelligence. And I think it is really worth to read. And yes, of course, some applications, some social interface of AI applications are a danger for the human dignity and for the social, for the democratic process. And in the center is the human dignity. And the document Antiqua et Nova, I think, explains very well what is the nucleus of the human dignity. It is the capability of the human being for moral responsibility. And of course, self-determination, and that gives a special sense of freedom, but moral responsibility. And so we have to call this moral responsibility to the different levels of acting. So the politicians, the civil society stakeholders, the faith communities, but, and I think very important, every man and every woman. So this need for moral responsibility, education was mentioned, and I really liked also the term of courage. We need the courage in line with our moral responsibility for solutions.
Courage for, well, the true about what is happening. This is very important, and I think this in this document was, I mean, for me, was very interesting. These issues connected with idolizing technologies, like putting them and putting those companies, seeing them as some kind of gods, some kind of reason for everything and for solving everything. So, yep. So, proszę Państwa, jeszcze jest kilka minut na pytania.
Still have a few minutes for questions. Great. The panel will go on and on and on. Plenty of questions. There is a gentleman who's got a mic. But please ask questions rather than make comments. Because you can make comments, but after the panel is over. Just introduction before I ask the question. Dear speakers, ladies and gentlemen, we're discussing very important things that make us emotional. But the thing is, At the end of the day, we are made of bodies. We need water, and we need warmth in our rooms, and we need food. Let's shift from operational technology, from IT to operational technology, OT. Because only once we can be operational, once we are operational, can we participate in a conflict. So my question is this. It's about resources. So there is this concept, in Polish, we use this word użytowanie. So the thing is, you have two wings, reliability and resilience. If you're not resilient, cyber attacks are successful. Lack of resilience results in 70% of successful hacking attacks. So the question is, how resilient are we? Who would like to take this question? How resilient are we? The general. General. We can give you the mic. Jarek, yes, of course. We should address it to him. Are we resilient? We've been spending a lot of money on various IT systems, on energy grid, on our water piping system. So we are investing a lot of money and resources in infrastructure. But it is not about spending a lot of money on just sensors. No. Cyber hygiene, training, common sense. I spoke to Deputy Mayor of Sopot. It was a conference of cities. In a number of cities, mind you, you've used this term OT, operational. So in a number of cities, it is the traffic wardens that are responsible for that. You got this right. So, grid, water pipes, this is our priority for the next months. So critical infrastructure, we've been hearing about how important it is for a long time now. One gentleman, another gentleman would like to ask questions. Many questions around there. That's good. A question to the general. Let's talk about 2007. Estonia fell victim of a Russian cyber attack, and critical infrastructure got paralyzed in this country. They have introduced blockchain technology since then to be secure. In 5 other continents, they have copies of birth certificates. So their birth certificates have been digitized and copied and are stored on 5 other continents. And the US Army has also introduced blockchain to train US supply chains. And in Poland, neither the army nor the state has been using blockchain technology. Why? Why are we not like Estonia? So let me just explain it. It's about dispersed databases and mechanisms that make sure that this data, even though dispersed, spread over the place, are still retaining their integrity. So I'm not saying that we don't use it, because in many aspects we do use such technologies. Now, when it comes to national registers, they need to follow certain legal regulations, legal framework. And this legal framework stipulates that our data must not be moved outside the administrative borders of our country. It is illegal to do so. The Ministry of Digital Affairs, for the last 2 years, have been trying to draft this concept of digital embassy. So you can use data centers outside the Polish borders, and then we could disperse our data outside the Polish territory. To follow up on what Jarek said, there are certain cloud solutions that deliver sovereign solutions. So we can use hyperscalers technology to build our own data centers that will be reliable and dispersed. And at the same time, we are retaining control over this data. Mind you, such technologies are not cheap because we need to buy know-how, and it's really costly. You've mentioned one more thing. Let's not compare ourselves to Estonia. Yes, Estonia is highly digitized. But remember, they are much less numerous than we are, you know. There are fewer of them, so the challenge is different. But yes, Estonia is presented as a kind of a role model. But please remember about the Polish technology potential. So I'm asking you about two things here. Notice the following. Let's talk about the Polish IT services and what kind of people we train here. Let's talk about percentages. Let's look at people who graduate from ICT and cybersecurity courses. When it comes to the percentage, the share of people who train in that, it's very high. We train those people, many people, and we do it well. And there are various IT competitions, algorithm competitions, and they show that we are strong in this regard. But let's ask a question. How come that we Poles are more happy to buy Polish products from foreign companies? We are not buying Polish products for Poles. Yes, I know why you're silent. And we do not trust our own services. And that translates into how we operate when there are certain tender procedures. And tender procedures regulate our access to technologies. So, think of all these elements, and there you see we have a problem with technology sovereignty. The question is, do we trust the Polish products? It's all interconnected.
But yes, as for our app, mObywatel, we are also supporting the team responsible for this app, supporting it also in the area of security. We've got specialists there. We can be proud of that. And the last thing, perhaps, Poles as key resources building the AI, but outside Poland, not in Poland. It's quite strange for me. Because the one thing that we do perhaps better than producing talents is losing talents. More questions? Thank you. I would like to refer to the AI again. I've recently come to the conclusion that you can compare perhaps the AI to a battery, part of each device perhaps we are using, but not really thinking about that. So I think the AI is moving in this direction. It will be part of every aspect of our life, starting with the defense, perhaps through medical education. It is something that has a great future, great opportunity, but also has some threats linked. I worked in a closely regulated environment, and we've concluded that in Europe we are not working on the AI, but mainly on the AI Act, AI legislation. And only now can we move on perhaps to working on the AI and different AI systems. I've come across also an opinion that the governments of the United States and China subsidized very much AI technologies in their countries, but in Europe, well, it was incomparable. Billions when compared maybe to 1 billion in Europe. So we are still lagging behind in the AI. We are just consumers of what is produced by companies outside Europe. We used algorithms that have been created in the Silicon Valley, and we are not able to, still in Europe, to do something similar, to produce such AI that could be competitive on the international market. So now a question to the panelists. What is your idea to change that so that Europe is not lagging behind. It's not naked Europe, as it was mentioned, but we should simply catch up with others, but have a chance also to maybe get even better technologically than the US and China.
It's for you.
Thank you. I think it was a very good description of the situation, and I'm sorry I have to say that it's about money. But of course not money that is spent without a good planning, but it's about money, and it is now the time that we are developing the multi-annual financial framework in the European Union. These 2 years will be about that, and we will have to carefully consider what we spend the money for. In this year, we speak more about defense in that sense, which is very important, but also investment in competitivity, including AI, is very important for Europe, as it is keeping agriculture a strong sector in Europe. So it will be a huge fight, a huge debate, where we will have to find the right balance. But indeed, we need much more investment in Europe, and I hope that also private funding will be in this. So not only we're trying to find the money that is not there, because public money is from taxes, it is from borrowing, which is not good, it's debt for the future decades. But private money is there. There's a lot of money on the market that should be used for such investments, and here we need clever strategies at European level, and I hope we have them.
Friederike?
Just very briefly, I also wanted to refer to this multi-annual financial framework. Well, the EU only has the money the member states give them. Debt is difficult, and it is strictly legally regulated for the EU. And there you see right now very hard discussions. The next EU research framework, Horizon Europe, will be doubled. It will be doubled, or the proposal is to double it. The proposal is, yeah, so the parliament will be sharp with that probably. But that will mean, for example, less money for agriculture. This is on the less money for social projects. And there we really start in Brussels with very, very difficult discussions, and it will be in some sense also cruel.
Dziękujemy. I następne, tam jest pani się zgłasza. I za chwilkę przejdziemy też do pytań z tej strony. Tak, widziałam pana.
Questions from this room, yes, please. I have the following question. I'll make a proposal, perhaps, to Mr. General. Maybe the point number 8 is still missing. In point 8 in your presentation, you could have also, I think, mentioned that when we speak about the other remaining points, what is perhaps the change in the current conflict, permanent conflict. We say that the defense, active defense, is also about the whole society being part of this defense. So I think point 8 that I could suggest, if I may, is about how can we ensure the subjectivity of each human individual, everyone who becomes part of an attempt to solve the problems of the country. Because what we are discussing here, we speak about the AI, it's not only linked to people who are more and more dependent on some algorithms, but it also means the alienation of individuals from social problems. So I would suggest that the title "Lonely Europe" concerns not only the continent, but each individual. We are lonely, we are atomized within society, we as individuals. So this is one problem that concerns also the different social platforms. And we, at the moment, with reference to the AI, we have a completely new problem. It's not human intelligence, if I can put it like this, non-human intelligence replacing us very quickly. So the question is, how can we actually base our life on individuals, on people? We are not naked in Europe, but we are divided in Europe. We are divided, atomized, we are individuals. So What's your question to the general? How can we make sure, again, the subjectivity of each human individual, how can it be kept so that they are part, as if, of this new form of conflict, new form of war, internally and externally? So you're asking, we are atomized, yes, divided as a society. How can we be part of the defense? Thank you, I think, for this question. I think it's quite obvious that these are humans, individuals who fight in the war. We have new technologies, and new technologies have given humans even more efficient methods. This is what happens at each war, basically. Technological changes, technological breakthroughs that can be decisive for victory. And we've now come up with a certain autonomy. AI is seen, and during the war, is seen first of all as for automation of the field. So we have to kill, or maybe I should say we have to damage faster in a more efficient way in the war. So now the question is, can we have a war with drones where drones would be shooting other drones? What will happen? Well, there will always be someone suffering, unfortunately. People will always be suffering in wars. There will be destruction. So future conflicts, these are the points that sometimes I also show at presentations, where the idea is to show how to use technologies in the military, different breakthrough technologies. And we clearly see that we will be using new technologies, that is to replace humans and to make our actions more efficient. So attacks, as if directed on the other side, should be more efficient. And this, well, unfortunately, has to be said. I spoke to two people about that, and I dare say that we do have a problem in the Western world. I'm not speaking about Europe only, but we have a problem building identity and responsibility of citizens for their country. We have created a situation in the Western world, and again, this is an observation general. I'm also an academic teacher at the High Academy of the military. I speak to members of the military very often. So it's not about, again, saying how to act properly when you wear a uniform, but it's more about civilians. My observation is the following. If I have 20 young people I speak to, IT specialists, for instance, people, experts with some universal also knowledge, they have no problem finding jobs. Say we've got 3 young men, and they will say, they would be happy getting military training so that they can defend themselves, defend their family, mother, father. But the problem I see is that we are not thinking enough, perhaps, about identity, about what we want to do to defend our country, our values. Young people perhaps do not feel responsible enough to defend our land, the land of our fathers and mothers, as I could call it. I think there is a need, again, to create this identity and feeling of responsibility for your country. We want to involve people in what used to be quite general and there in the past, something quite usual in the past that has changed. Again, that, for instance, you want to spend some time for the common good. This is very often missing. And the last question, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it's excellent comments, Mr. General. Thank you for this applause. But again, last question, I'm afraid. You can still speak to the panelists maybe after the session, if possible. But our time is up. Time to give our speakers some rest. So, in spite of a question, maybe a proposal first. Did you have any, Janusz, with a foreign accent calling and suggesting investments into cryptocurrencies? So I can invite you, actually, as potential victims of different scams. This might be a funny question, but you can see the scale of many people calling fraudsters, scammers, calling you, offering investments into cryptocurrencies. But many people actually do not realize that this is a fraud. Recently, I also found President Nawrocki saying, give me 1,000 zloty and you will be getting 30,000 every month. I had a look at that and I thought, no, it's impossible. President cannot be involved in such a fraud. But it was prepared so well, deep fake was prepared so well that it looked like it was actually the president of the Republic of Poland who was offering an investment into cryptocurrencies. Incredibly well created. And the problem I can see is that I later had a look at the report of the state prosecution, and according to this report, last year 200 million Polish zlotys were stolen this way. Now the question is how many people did not actually notify to the police about such scams. And another problem I can see that President Nawrocki again says, give me 1,000, you will be getting 30,000 per month later, but then let's say there will be an attack from Russia, and you will have the deep fake film of the president saying that we surrendered to Russia, we are not going to fight. What do we do later? Well, plenty of threats, plenty of problems also on YouTube and others. Hopefully, well, there are people dealing with that. There are huge problems, global problems, scams that you mentioned, and commercials on the platforms. Platforms are making money, of course, as a result. They are, of course, analyzed. Hopefully, there are experts who do their best to fight that. Also, the banks, of course, they very often suffer as a result. So there are experts in banks also. So it's not that we don't realize that there is a problem, but of course, we have not solved this yet, because this is another point we could be discussing here about our security in the world. I'm afraid I'm a moderator and no more questions, I'm afraid. The organizers are also telling me it's time to finish. Outside the conference room, if possible, you can continue this discussion. Thank you very much. I wish to thank our panelists.
Very interesting. Bardzo dziękuję, panie generale, i zapraszam.
Thank you very much. Time for lunch and for some closing remarks before lunch.
Proszę Państwa, ja bardzo...
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been looking forward to this panel discussion, a very interesting subject, but well, I'm actually now very much worried about the pace of changes of our world and how difficult to understand this new world is for many of us. Just to tell you, when we were preparing this panel session, we were looking for someone who would be able to focus on the ethical issues. You did mention the ethical issues, of course. I need to add that in the Catholic Church, in the Apostolic See, there are also experts who are dealing with ethics in this context. We were not able, unfortunately, to make sure they would be present here this year. The problem was probably that there are still quite a few experts in the Vatican on that, and they are traveling around the world. This is what we have found out, that they were too busy, unfortunately, to visit us this time. Mr. General, thank you very much for your intervention. Sylwia, thank you for moderating the discussion. I thank all panelists as well. Ladies and gentlemen, each conference starts with some words of welcome, and then we have to say goodbye at the end. And also we have to say thank you. Please allow me to thank, first of all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you for coming to Kraków and being part of this conference. I wish to thank our partner, the EPP group in the European Parliament. Thank you for organizing this conference together, and also our co-organizers, the Polish delegation in the EPP political group, the Schuman Foundation. Also, I wish to thank COMECE. I thank our media partners, KAI, Tygodnik Powszechny, Przewodnik Katolicki, and Więź, Polish media, Catholic media. I wish to thank our colleagues for working and informing the users of social media about us. Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, Antoni, for pictures and our sound. And I wish to thank also our interpreters and technicians. Thank you in advance for your applause. And let me finish. My young colleagues who were helping us at the reception, making sure that we all feel comfortable here.